Founded presents Triumph, India's leading virtual career fair for diversity. Discover over 5,000 jobs at companies that celebrate you. Find a workplace that's equally yours between the 12th to the 14th of November. Enroll now.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. And welcome to Triumph, which is India's leading and one of the largest virtual career fairs, championing diversity and inclusivity for women, LGBTQIA, and PWD professionals. As a part of this event, we do a series called Triumph Connect, which brings together inspiring leaders and experts to drive conversations around diversity and inclusion. My name is Saurabh Srivastava, and I'm the marketing head for Foundit, a leading online talent intelligence and recruitment platform which operates across India, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East. We are here today to delve on an essential and a very timely topic. The topic is diversity and inclusion in India versus the rest of the world. So, as we navigate an increasingly interconnected world, the conversation surrounding D&I has never been more pertinent. Organizations everywhere are recognizing that a diverse and inclusive workplace is not just a matter of ethics, but it is also something which significantly impacts business outcomes, drives employee satisfaction, and drives innovation. There are some key stats that I want to present before we set the stage for this topic. So there was a recent survey that McKinsey did, wherein they found that companies in the top quartile of gender diversity on executive teams are 25% more likely to experience above average profitability. Another study done by a Catalyst group in India found that organizations with higher representation of women in leadership have better organizational performance metrics when compared to their counterparts. Having said all of this, the challenges still persist. So the Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends report for 2023 still indicates that only 39% of Indian employees feel included at work, which when compared to the global average of 56% is still lower. And this is where we need to bridge the gap. So with this, today I have the privilege of hearing from Shruti Swaroop, who's our speaker today. She's the co-founder of International Inclusion Alliance, and she's a very renowned figure in the D&I industry. She's dedicated her career to driving transformation in this domain. She will share with us insights into the unique challenges that shape India's diversity landscape, discuss how top companies are addressing these challenges, and together we'll explore how we can learn from global practices to foster inclusive workplaces. A little bit about Shruti before we start. Growing up in a defense family, Shruti naturally embraced inclusion, and her personal experiences ignited her passion for advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Shruti Swaroop is a global DEI and HR advisor with over 20 years of experience in consulting and C-suite coaching. She is someone who is known for her expertise in key roles with the UK government and leading organizations across 4 continents. She is the founder of Embrace Consulting and co-founder of both the International Inclusion Alliance and the ERTZ Academy. Driven by a mission to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion on a global scale, Shruti's initiatives empower organizations to create inclusive, psychologically safe, and productive workplaces. Shruti has worked across industries from manufacturing to construction, bringing more women into the workforce in India, Western Asia, and beyond. You might also have seen her on some of the TEDx sessions where she's spoken about making choices and embracing diversity. Today with us, Shruti will share insights on effectiveness of D&I in India versus the rest of the world. Let's all give a warm welcome to Shruti Swaroop. Shruti, welcome to Triumph Connect.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you so much. I'm actually very humbled to be here and speaking to you about something I think I know you're passionate about as well.
Yeah, and we are super excited to have you here. So just to get the ball rolling, and I think we have got our audience who are eagerly waiting to kind of hear from you. Just another nugget of data before we start, and this is a section where we'll kind of delve upon the unique challenges that India as a landscape faces when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So just to kind of give context to that, India is home to over 2,000 distinct ethnic groups and more than 1,600 spoken languages. So you can very well imagine the complexity which leads to varied perspective and experiences. So with that, Shruti, can you share some of the unique challenges that organizations in India face regarding diversity and inclusion?
Thank you, Saurabh. I remember many, many years back when the offshoring thing had just come into India, and organizations used to bring in their entire offshore set here, and then people used to go from here to the US or Europe to get to do their work. And I remember, and I'm talking years, decades back, and I remember the conversations used to be about cultural sensitization and people from the south are different, northern India are different, western India are different. The fact is that India is very, very varied. We have people with accent is different, language is different, our upbringing is different, the food we eat is different, the style of working is different. So even within the country, for any organization, I remember there was this one organization, and I'm going a little side. There was this one organization many years back which was planning to shift their office from Gurgaon to Chennai, and it was a complete chaos because our food habits are different. So the kind of challenges we are talking about is not just what you see in, say, just the US or what you see in the Europe. Here you're talking about language, you're talking about food, you're talking about culture, you're talking about education, you're talking about very clear racism as well. To say we are very, very color conscious people, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not. You still have those advertisements that come that you want a good looking fair bride. So yeah, that's the kind of world we are living in. I know of very senior people who are DEI advocates in their organization who come and tell me, oh, that particular person, he doesn't speak good English. Do we really want him in the system? And I go back and say, dude, you are you are a DEI advocate in your organization. You can't be telling me that just because I don't speak good English, I can't be in the organization. As long as I'm doing a good job, how does it matter? So yeah, that's the kind of world we live in. We are known to snub people who don't follow a set pattern of biases. We have comments that come in about, that guy is a guard. Do you really want to work with a guard's daughter, or the guy who the kabadi wala's daughter? And today, my kabadi wala, the guy who picks up the newspapers at home, his daughters are doing. One is doing BDS, one is doing MA psychology. It's amazing. So if you start using that kind of biases, we are living in it's a chaos.
So rightly put. I think it's very complex, and India adds to the complexity, right? Because of this entire thing around caste and socioeconomic fabric and languages and food and whatnot, right? So with all of this in the Indian context, for DE&I has many layers of identity, right? So how can companies in this case better address this intersectionality in our DEI initiatives?
I think the first part is we need to understand this intersectionality. I am not just a woman. I am a married woman, which is going to be different from a single woman, which is going to be different from a single woman who's a single parent, a married woman who's a single parent. So I think then the urban part of me, then the educated part of me, then you know, the language part of me. So I think, which is very, I remember doing a session with an organization in Pune early this year. And the conversation was exactly that how do you have the same policy for women when the flexibility that a married woman in a joint family needs is different from a married woman in a nuclear family, is different from a single parent, is different from a single woman. And we are trying to fit everybody into policies. We are trying to fit everybody into the same kind of structure. My other issue is organizations believe that once I've created a policy, it is one size fits all. And I always say a policy is a framework, which means that you have a broad framework, and then there are people who will always not fit into that. And hence, we need to accommodate for them. You can't just say, oh, my policy doesn't say this, so I can't do this for Shruti. How do you know Shruti will come with different challenges? So I think How do organizations settle work around the intersectionality? I think first by understanding there is intersectionality. First by understanding that there are, it's not a very clear divide, as people say that it's gender, it's PWD, it's neurodiversity, it's LGBTQI. No, there is so many roles. So I think that is first thing. The second is understanding that no policy uh, is a watertight compartment. Policies are made as frameworks. People are not so structured and watertight. So you have to accommodate for the fact that there will be moments in my life where I will not fit into what has been created. And most HR business partners I hear, they'll come back and say, oh, our policy doesn't say that. And we spend so much time working with HR business partners across India specifically, where we say, your role is to partner, your role is to understand that it is not as clear as chalk and, black and white. You have to understand and accommodate for that. So that's two. And I think those are two very clear things. If we start becoming flexible with that, if we start understanding that people are different, that'll at least be the first step. Right now, we don't even understand that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Shruti, because I think it's a step change that is required, right? And it starts with acceptance more than anything else. So you have to understand, you have to accept, and then embrace, right? You can't jump the gun. You can't, say that I am a DNI practitioner, but not understand the nuances of it. So understanding the nuances is very, very important. I firmly believe in that, right? But what do you think? What are some of these specific barriers that are hindering this progress for DNI in the Indian context today?
As I said, so people don't understand it. We have created this thing about DEI. Our leadership doesn't understand it. The number of times I get called by some HR person or one advocate within the organization saying, Shruti, you need to convince my entire CXO minus one about DEI. And there you're sitting with 20 something, and these are people with 25 years of experience, 26 years of experience, who have never worked with a diverse group, who you're suddenly wanting them to change their style of working, and especially manufacturing, construction, where they've historically we've not seen women at all. So, what are the barriers? I think we don't have the experience. We are close to it. The first thing in manufacturing and construction we keep hearing is, ma'am, we've not had women here. Or I've heard senior leaders come back and say, oh, we know how women are being treated. So we don't want our daughters, we don't want people we know in this setup to come and work on the shop floor because we know how women are treated. And I keep telling them, I said, you are senior leaders. You can change the way you treat people. And that will be the first step. So, understanding our culture, understanding of what it entails, our culture, cost. People are have refused to put in money towards creating an inclusive workspace in India. I work in the US, I work in Europe, we work in Asia. The number of times I get pushed back on budgets for DEI is not funny. People will be like, get us to do trainings, capability building trainings, leadership development trainings, coaching. There's money being spent like nobody's business on coaching, on leadership development programs, high potential, middle management. Nobody wants to spend money on DEI. And the kind of conversations that I have and negotiations I have on DEI is like, I'm like, wow. Even though DEI is such a nuanced thing, you need people who understand inclusion for someone to come and do a program. A random person will come who doesn't understand inclusion. They will not even understand the nuances of LGBTQAI. They will not know what the acronym stands for. So you have a person who's specialized, who understands, who's experienced, who's coming and speaking and sharing. And yet you don't want to spend money. So budgets is an issue. Again, it goes back to because our leaders don't understand the importance of it. A lot of times I've had senior leaders come and tell me, Madam, business चल रहा है ना 25 सालों से. अब क्यों अचानक से we need to change it? And these are big organizations. So yeah, so these are some of the barriers. As I said, the leadership not signing up, budgets not being there. We are very tough on what we want to do. There is no understanding of metrics. People don't understand how to measure it. So that till you don't, as they say, what gets measured gets done. So
Yeah.
we are trying to help organizations to measure it. We're trying to help organizations understand the nuances and measure it. But again, because we are such a wide country and intersectionality also exists, how do you even measure down to the last um, side of me? So, which
Yeah.
part of me is adding to performance? Is it the gender part of me? Is it the language part of me? Is it the urban part of me? So then it becomes a little messy. So yeah, we're trying to solve it one step at a time. At
And
least
that's
we
a
are
very
talking.
valid point. I think I'll come to the measurement part, which is very, very key to this entire dialogue that we're having. But having said that, I think another part that you've really brought into the fore is investment. So I think acceptance is fine, understanding is fine, but if you don't invest behind it, then you're not really reaping the benefits, you're not really leveraging it, you're not really being truthful to the entire charter of DNI that you've taken as an organization. And that's very, very important. So good. I think that brings me to the next, or we transition to the next section, which is around how organizations in India are embracing it and what are they doing around it. So what I want to do is I want to, along with you, explore how some of the top companies are addressing these challenges that we've spoken about. So as per you, and you would have seen a lot of this in your career, what kind of innovative strategies or practices have you seen Indian companies implement to overcome these challenges? And when I say Indian, I mean both. I mean companies which have originated in India and global companies which have large offices in India, because both of them need to align to the cultural, importance that India has.
Sure. And here I'll possibly end up marketing a lot of organizations. Um, I started my career with Sapient, and I remember back in 2001, Sapient, which is now Publicis, uh, used to have policies which are way ahead of its times. I still believe some of the best policies and the best acceptance of people that I see have been with Sapient. Sapient has people with disabilities. There's enough scope for gender diversity. They're talking about LGBTQAI. Then there are organizations like um, Aditya Birla Grasim, Hindalco, that is doing a lot of work. We do a lot of work with bringing in women into Aditya Birla Grasim at their factories. And they're doing great work. L&T is doing a lot of work. Accenture is doing a lot of policies are being put in, have been in place, and Accenture is known for that. IBM is known for that. Um, so some organizations, but when you speak about pure play Indian organizations, um, the intent is there, which is a good part. A lot of organizations come and there's intent. Godrej is doing great work. And those are good things which are happening. When we speak about organizations, and I'm just thinking aloud with you, there are quite a few organizations that also come back and say, we don't want it. And no names taken here, but we've also had organizations come and say, we don't want it, we don't need it, it's too much of a chaos to do. Um, but yeah, there's some organizations, as I said, I think if I remember some data, I'm just kind of thinking. I think Accenture is aiming for a 50% gender balanced workforce. I know Tata Group is doing a lot of work. I am aware of the kind of work which is being done by Reckitt. I'm aware of the good work which is being done by, I think, Mahindra. In fact, Mahindra is even for their outlets and their various parts of Mahindra. They have some good work which is being done. Toyota, I think, has entire women-led dealerships.
Hmm.
McCain is doing great work. I remember getting in touch with McCain Foods about 3 years back, and they were in single digits. Today, they are in double digits as far as women is concerned. They have an entire factory outlet somewhere in, I think, Nosana in Gujarat, which is entirely led by women. And Sandeep is going to kill me if I get the name of the factory outlet wrong. But yeah, so there's quite a lot of organizations which are doing great work, and it's very heartwarming to see that.
Yeah,
Pharma,
and
there is a lot of good work which is being
Pharma,
done.
yes, yeah, yeah. And I also recollect because at Founded we work very, very closely with some of these companies for their hiring needs on diversity, on inclusion, and all of that. And I remember, without really naming, because if I start naming again the same problem, I name some and not name the others, and I'll get calls. But a very large global beverage company I know that we were working with had launched a program focusing on inclusivity for women and persons with disabilities. And they actually had data which showcased that there was a 30% increase in diversity hires over a period of 2 years that they did that. Again, a very large IT company in India who we were working with very closely implemented this gender diversity initiatives that increased their female representation by almost 9%, 10% over 3 years. So a lot of good work is happening. How does one make sure that some of this employer branding, some of this good work that they are doing is also get showcased in the right way, right? Without being seen as something that they are trying to do just because there's a mandate. Because sometimes the intent is pure beyond the mandate, because they understand and realize that diversity is really adding the fuel that they require for that growth, right? So that's very, very important. Do you recall any specific examples or stories in the recent past where you've seen organizations really take this up as a mandate and drive it to an outcome which is a positive outcome?
Loads, loads. There are quite a few organizations we've been working with for the last 3 years, 3 years, 4 years. Union Bank of India. In fact, I forgot to speak about the public sector space. ONGC, Indian Oil, Union Bank of India, Punjab National Bank, Canara Bank. Um, I need to really, all of these organizations need to reach out to me for their marketing right now.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah,
But no, but serious work, good work. And like in the manufacturing setup, with one organization, what we did is we created videos of their factories. We created videos of the environment. And these videos were taken to the local areas, the villages, the cities, and town to show what a nice, safe place it is. An entire
yeah.
township has been built, which attracted a lot of women to the factories, which attracted a lot of people with disabilities to the factories as well, because these organizations had ensured that there were washrooms, there was infrastructure, there were ramps, there was braille which was being used. For a lot of there's in the same organization, they also ensured they were hiring girls straight from grade 12 and
Oh,
getting
wow.
them to do diploma while they were working and interning, so that entire 3-4 years you're not just working, you're also doing your diploma, getting up to speed in terms of how the organization works and the specific skill set that you need at factories to work, which I thought was great. And that is the kind of investment we need, right? Where I'm investing in somebody at 17, 18 years of age, um, upskilling the person, making the person understand what it means, not just in things like HR and admin and operations, but also in business. And then preparing them for life. So I'm investing in a person's career, not just in Shruti's time at the organization, but in Shruti's career, which is like a 40-year time span, which I think is very heartwarming, great work which is being done.
Great. And what do you think is the role of leadership and policy? I think we touched upon that initially. What role do leadership and policy play in driving some of these initiatives?
Loads, loads. I think if my leader is not signed up and doesn't believe in it, beyond a point, you will have, what we call microaggressions that come at play. And I don't know, I've just written a book which has been published called Microaggressions at Workplace, where I have mentioned about this, that you may have the best intent, but if you don't believe in it, then it comes through in small things. It will come through in me making a statement like, oh, you're creating a big hue and cry. Is it like that time of the month? I'm creating a hue and cry because I really believe in something. And even if it is that time of the month, why does it have to come into office conversations? So the leader believing in it means budgets are allocated, means policies are made, means microaggression doesn't run from the top. So you can control it because culture comes from there. So leadership plays a huge role in that. And when I say leadership, it is not just the CEO, it is the CHRO, it is the CMO, it is the CFO, because it's each one of us who needs to drive it. And people follow the role models they see. If I am not speaking with respect to people, and that is not just women, it is also people with disabilities, it is also people who are neurodiverse, it is also people who come from the community. If I see somebody who's not being respectful, I will by force stop it, not respect them. And that is the first step to, the recruitment team can bring in as many people as you want to. You can, have a mandate, oh, we are going to get in 100 people. How do you retain that talent? To retain that talent, you need an environment that understands, which has the right policy, which is sensitive, which is respectful. And that is what is important. I'll give you an example. And I hope I'm not taking a lot of time, but I'll give you this. This
No,
is
no, go
very
ahead.
important.
Yeah.
So, someone I know, again, the DEI champion at the organization, and we were having a conversation at, informal gathering, just chatting, and we are talking about somebody who got promoted. And this gentleman says, oh, she anyways had to get promoted. She has gender on her side. I was like, when these are senior leaders, these are people who are sitting at the CXO roles, and you make statements like these. I'm like, even if I come up with a policy and I get you to advocate for it, and if you're going to make those statements that Shruti's been promoted because she has a gender on her side, it just doesn't, the person who's working next to you will pick it up.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of time when whether I say it in as many words, and maybe this was an informal gathering, so you were more vocal. You, as in a generic you, the gentleman was more vocal. But in a formal gathering, you may not say it explicitly, but it'll show in your behaviors.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
are going to be very dismissive of the person. You'll be like, yeah, whatever, she's got it because of her gender, she doesn't deserve it. Or you're going to do a tick in the box that it's a part of my KPI. I need to have 5 women in my team who let's hire. And then you're going to have this one person who or two male members who will end up doing all the work because you'll not give work to those three other women who you were supposed to hire and you didn't want to hire. That was your KPI. You done and dusted. And then what happens is these two people end up doing work of 5 people, and the three women don't have a career path. You're not supporting them, you're not giving them opportunities. These two men are also burnt out because they're taking the extra workload. And the levels down are all watching what is happening.
Yeah.
That for me is a huge red sign. And my point is, you can't be doing this. We fail to see how many times we are observed by people. And I say this, the number of times what I wear, how I talk, what I eat, how I respond is observed by my team members or people around me. I don't even know. People watch everything you do. If you're living in the illusion that people are not watching, that's exactly the word. It's an illusion.
Yeah. No, and this is extremely insightful and incisive, right? What you just told, and I also see it around a lot of times, and which is where this entire thing of practicing what you preach is very, very important, and sensitization and understanding again come to the fore. They're very, very important, especially for leaders, because as you said, people emulate leaders, people make them their role models. So it's very important that you walk the talk, that you really understand what you're doing. At this point, I would also want to tell our audience that whatever you face as challenge or as a good part in your organizations, please share with us on the chat. Also, if you have questions, please put them on the chat. Towards the end of this session, we'll take up some of those questions. We'll also love to go through some of your experiences on the DNI side in your organization. So please feel free to write in the chat. Okay, so this was wonderful. Let's transition to something even more interesting, which is we looked at how cultural nuances in India make DNI more complex to kind of understand their practice. We then looked at some of the companies and best practices that are happening in this space. Now let's delve a little bit more into the cultural dynamics that shape DNI. So my question to you on this, Shruti, is in what ways do you think cultural dynamics uniquely influence diversity and inclusion in India?
If you go back some 100 years, we 200 years. India is a country that is wide in always. When I say wide, like the length and breadth of the country. And then obviously, as you were saying earlier, we have various states, we have so many languages, we have so many cultures. When you are in UP, for example, just traveling from Lucknow till Allahabad, the number of languages that change, the food choices that change, and then if you travel from there to Ranchi and then to Calcutta, so people who've done a road trip from Delhi to Calcutta know what I'm talking about. It just changes. So we are a country which is culturally, there is so much to offer, and great tagline for tourism. Too much to offer, so much to offer. Great to see. You have uh, beaches and mountains and all of that. The fact is, this is also a country that um, the way women are treated, and I'm just talking women right now, I'm not even going into other parts of diversity. The way women are treated in Rajasthan is very different from the way they are treated in UP, is very different from the way they are treated in Madras or Chennai, Tamil Nadu. So, what that means is you have a different set of education. Again, I'm just talking about gender at this point in time. You will have women who are postgraduates in certain parts of the state, and then there are women who will not, who will possibly struggle to even finish their graduation in certain parts of the state. I work extensively until about a year back exclusively with women in my team. And by the time they're 23, 24, the conversations at home are around, why do you want to study? Is it important? Just keep doing your job. Let's get you married. Question around how do organizations work around in a setup like this? It's very layered. It's very complex. And I say this to organization, let's start from the smallest denominator, which is the easiest, which is gender. Even in gender, can you ensure there are no microaggressions? Can you ensure that you're bringing in women and you're retaining women? As I said a little while back, it's very easy to have to say that, okay, we are going to move the needle from a 6% to a 13% or a 10% to a 30%. Retaining them is the issue. And for that, the complexity is about ensuring that you're creating an environment. So gender sensitization sessions are something that we need to do. Leadership awareness is something we need to do. Flexible working hours is something we need to do. Without the grudge that why are we doing it for women? Because honestly, there comes a stage in life when even men need flexibility. There comes a stage in life when your parents are old and you need to give time to them. You need to take them to hospitals. You need to, your children are growing up, your parents are growing old. So even men need that flexibility. So saying that women need it when they have young children, I think that's a wrong thing to say. So you need to have that understanding. You need to have policies that really, even at the hiring stage, there's an organization that at the hiring stage checks your interest towards LGBTQ. So there is a form in the hiring form that says, how are you an advocate of LGBTQAI? And it's a 5 scale, and not interested, interested, acceptable, so on and so forth. And basis that, people are then leveraged to either make them advocates of the community, or at least work with them. And if someone says, I am not comfortable, it's perfectly fine. I'm not forcing you to change yourself, but at least getting those advocates. So I think we need clear advocates of that from the hiring stage. How comfortable are you working with women in your team? How comfortable are you working with a only women team? How comfortable are you working with people with special abilities? In India, we have the government compliance for people with special abilities in the public sector, but the private sector, there is no compliance, no regulation, which means that every person I am hiring in the private sector is because I want to hire. So
Yeah.
when you do that, it's a great first step. And I'm sorry, I'm so passionate about this. I'm possibly just going away from your question, but this Tata Group came up with Braille so many years back when nobody else was talking about it.
Yeah.
I remember I was possibly in school when I first saw, and these were lifts which had braille next to the digits in them. And I'm
Yeah.
talking 1995,
Which is very
1996.
common now, but many, many years back, it was not even seen, right?
No.
Yeah.
And I'm forgetting the lift brand, but I'm talking 1995, 1996. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
just to be sensitive enough to have braille there, then small things, it makes a lot of difference. And I've
And
completely
you
forgotten your
seem
question now.
No, no, you've answered it in most ways, and I think my question that I'm asking now is as a connect to that will answer some of it again, which is where I was saying you have exposure to all the markets. You've worked across India, US, Europe, and other parts of the world. What do you think Indian companies can learn from global best practices when it comes to building inclusive workplaces?
Loads. So one is obviously budgeting. One is obviously to account for the expenses that come by. When we work in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the Middle East or the US, we have clients in California and the Bay Area. We have some clients in the East Coast as well, New York, Boston, and the amount of the ability to say yes to expenses related to DAI or not negotiating on a cost is very heartwarming for me as for me as a consultant or as somebody who's really passionate about this. Because when you're trying to create a DEI group, an ERG, or the entire group for running DEI, it's a longish thing. It's somebody who's, say, for example, going to travel from India to Dubai or from India to Belgium or India to San Francisco. Even if, especially if you don't want to do this virtually, and a lot of organizations completely refuse, we don't want to do this virtually. We need a local person, or we need specifically A, B, or C to come and talk about it. It needs a lot of courage to say, yes, I am willing to set aside this amount of money, have Shruti travel from India to Dubai once a quarter, spend an entire day with my DEI council, help them create their vision mission statement, help them implement that statement, help them create various ERGs. It's not easy to do that. And it is not just my cost, it is also the opportunity cost of that 15 people in the DEI council who are from various businesses. So they are taking out a day every month from their business and investing into something which will not have a real tangible output at the word go. So that's an opportunity cost. That's a billable time that I would have spent towards building my business, which I am not. I'm spending toward the softer part of it. And that needs understanding that that 15 hours or 15 man hours that my DI council of 15 people will spend every month over a period of time will lead to far more benefits and productivity and profits and revenues than the cost of those 15 man hours.
Right.
And it's a huge understanding. A lot of times people think, DEI cost is only about getting Shruti to come to Dubai or come to travel to Bombay and spending that time. No, it is also about those 15 people or 10 people, whatever is your DEI council, they are spending that time. People have either misused the policies that are coming out of DEI or misunderstood them or not managed to utilize them the way they should. The statements I keep hearing from people is that there's so much focus on gender that there is nothing else which is happening. And I say this very often, too much inclusion leads to exclusion. Stop talking about inclusion by just saying, oh, we need to do this. Talk about inclusion in the bigger umbrella. Talk about equity. Talk about fairness. Talk about societal justice. Every person has the right to opportunities. Where we go wrong is we try to create so many policies that we actually exclude. So suddenly Shruti gets all the benefits, but Saurabh is not getting the benefits. That's not what we're talking about. We're
Yeah.
talking about if Shruti is performing, let her get the opportunity rather than saying that, okay, Shruti is performing, but because she's a woman, she'll not possibly not be able to contribute in 4 years down the line. So let's not invest in her or let's give her less salary. Let's not, so the gender gap, the pay gap is happening, or let's not give her the opportunities to grow. So there's promotion gap which is happening, or let's not train her because why invest in Shruti? She'll anyways leave once her children grow or once she becomes a mother or whatever is stage of life she got in. So let me invest in Saurabh instead because Saurabh will not take maternity leave. Saurabh will not want flexible hours. Saurabh will not drop out of work because his children are doing their board exams. I have a problem with that mindset. I think nobody is saying that we need to do something different. All I'm saying is if I am performing, let me get the opportunity, whether it's
Right.
to be hired, to be promoted, to go through trainings, to be given a foreign opportunity. I mean, I was hired by an organization many, many years back as their Asia Pacific HR head. And I had, I think, 7 offices under me in this area, which meant I had to travel everywhere. And I hats off to the organization. And my kids were very young at that point in time. I think one was 3, the other was 5. Even today, I feel that was a huge leap of faith the organization took. So
Yeah, that's correct. And yeah, I mean, I can't agree more with that. And now flipping that question, Shruti. So one, we talked about how we can learn from our global counterparts, be more sensitized, sensitive, be more updated with information. Now the other part of this is global companies that set up their offices in India. Are there cultural nuances that those organizations should be aware of when working in India?
outside the country, outside India, I think the big area of diversity is racism. Is the fact that you have people from different races working together. I don't see as much of gender non-inclusion happening outside. Though I'm sure when you speak to people in the US or in UK or in Europe, they will disagree. But when I compare it to India, I think they are at least a little ahead of us in terms of gender. But I think what any organization needs to understand is the complexity of India. When organizations come and set up their system here, they need to understand that they will have to go down to the bare minimum of inclusion when they are trying to create a workforce here. So some policies around, say, Black Lives and all of that may not work here. We need to go down to bare minimum, start from gender, and then build from there. Again, that also depends on industries. So, for example, IT industry will have less issues. I remember somebody from the IT industry once said, and I thought it was funny then. I don't say I find it funny anymore. But she said, um, inclusion for women is a first world problem in the IT industry. And I was like, why? I mean, she's like, no, because it's everybody gets hired. You don't need any special um, policies to be made because these are not those difficult jobs. This is not manufacturing or construction and all of that. Or speaking in Hindi, and then there is one person who doesn't understand Hindi. And I'm like, let's find one common factor, one common language to speak. So, what organizations, as to answer your question, we have language differences, we have cultural differences. So, be very careful when you're setting policies, be very careful when you're when you're hiring people. Know that at times people will want to move to their home location because of various reasons. Know that we still have very gender defined roles and hence the career stages will have to the career stage and the life stage will not always map, and so you have to be careful about the policies you make because my career stage will be different than what my life stage is, and
Yeah.
that disparity will be there. So yeah.
Example in my career that I saw, and this was a Japanese company that I was working for, and they didn't realize in India vegetarian and non-vegetarian food has to be separate, right? And they had a massive canteen which they started in a factory. It was a manufacturing company, and they faced so much of a backlash. So I think it just comes down to understanding the nuances, going through it, getting deeply immersed in some of these things. Because if you don't immerse, you don't understand it, and if you don't understand it, the chances are you will kind of do the wrong things without even knowing that you're doing something wrong. So that's very, very important, I think. Good. So I think we move on from there to our another important piece. And now, let's discuss actionable steps towards building inclusive workplaces. So we discussed all of this. Now let's see what are some of those actionable strategies that companies can adopt to ensure that new hirees especially feel valued and supported. So what do you think can be done from that perspective by a company?
Uh, I think we need to have bias-free recruitment. A lot of organizations are using tools, but there is significant bias that is there. So that's, I think, one thing that we need to do for, um, diversity and inclusion. So it's very easy to make a diverse workforce. And to be very honest, we are all diverse. When I say diverse, each one of us is different. If not in our food habits or our education, then just cognitive diversity. It is inclusion which is a issue. And depending on what the organization wants to measure, I think the first thing is we need to have matrices in place saying, okay, this is where I am, this is where I need to go, and learn to measure. Um, we have come up with our own tool as well, which measures inclusion. So, as I said, diversity is very easy to measure as long as you know what you're measuring. If you just want to measure women, it's men and women, it's easy. If you just want to measure sexual orientation, it's easy. If you just want to measure people with special abilities, it's easy. Intersectionality is an issue, but otherwise, diversity is easy to measure. Inclusion is very difficult to measure because inclusion is about behaviors. So we've come up with a tool to measure inclusion where we are measuring inclusion basis the intention of the leader versus the procurement versus policies processes that organizations have, um, versus infrastructure versus the communication that is used. And when I say communication, communication in terms of job descriptions, that's a form of communication. Communication in terms of the emails we write, what is the communication internally. So what can organizations do? I think we really need to start measuring. We need to start measuring our diversity. We need to start measuring our inclusion. We need to start measuring behaviors. We need to start measuring um, the number of people who are in, the number of people who are out, and why are they out. There's an organization I know which actually does quarterly measurement of every person who's applied for a role, at what stage did the person um, left the recruitment process, and the reason for that. Um, we need to there's the organization then also looks at the number of people who were promoted, the number of people who got opportunities, and if somebody has left, why did the person leave, at what tenure. So that measurement at that level is very, very important if you really want to make a change, because only then can you plug those holes exactly at the place where it needs to be plugged in.
So that was my follow-up question actually, and I wanted to understand from you if there is this framework that you've seen that really works well in terms of measurement. So what metrics should be measured? How often should they be measured? And how do you kind of create a practice around it so such that you have practices around finance and HR and marketing, right? Where you measure your KPIs and metrics. How do you create that framework, that metrics that can be measured on an ongoing basis to kind of figure out how you're doing as an organization and where do you want to kind of improve, where are you doing well, how do you measure all of this?
As I said earlier as well, we need to measure the intentionality of your leadership. And it is, while someone will say it is very difficult to measure, I say no. Because when you start measuring, and there's a proper scale to measure, if I reach out to 15 people in Saurabh's team and I say, okay, do you see Saurabh doing it with intent, or do you see Saurabh doing a tick in the box? How many times do you see Saurabh doing it? And it's not an easy thing to come up with, because somebody in the team may come out of, Saurabh just screamed at me, let me just, mark him all red. But it is not done with just Saurabh's name. I'm saying, is your leadership working out of intent? Do you see leadership doing a tick in the box? Do you see leadership doing it just because they need to do it, or because it's Women's Day, it's Men's Day, it's June Pride Month, and so on and so forth, or they are really, really doing it with the right intent? Because I honestly believe when you do it with the right intent, it leads to change. Anything done with the right intent really leads to a change. So I think we need to start measuring the intentionality of the leadership. We need to start capturing whether it is a part of our vision mission statement, and how is the vision mission statement being cascaded down in every way possible. So is it just there, or am I talking about it in every town hall? Am I talking about it every time there is a performance appraisal? Am I talking about it every time there's a um, any employee engagement activity? It any if ideally any vision, any values should be spoken about all the time. So how deeply ingrained are those values? How deeply ingrained is the vision mission? And it needs to be there. We need to measure what is happening on the floor. We need to be really have our eyes and ears on the floor, and not just take cognizance, but also ensure that there is repercussion every time there is a microaggression which is happening, every time there's harassment which is happening, every time somebody is saying something either out of lack of awareness or um, general genuine, I would like to believe nobody wakes up in the morning full of spite, but there are people who will not want to work with certain kind of people, and they're very open about it. I have heard statements like, that I don't want to work with somebody with a disability, or I don't like working with someone who's ugly looking. And these are honest statements I've heard. And I'm not making them out of thin air. I've heard senior leaders saying, oh, that person is ugly. I don't want to work with that person. I'm like, how do you even make a statement like that? So we need to start capturing those, and we need to start seeing what we can do about it. So measuring the leadership intent, measuring how well you're cascading the values, communication, measuring the ensuring your infrastructure, policy, processes is in place. Some of the things, how well are we dealing with our procurement, which is the vendor side. So it is not just internal, it is also external. How inclusive are we in terms of our clients? Are we really sensitive towards the people we work with, the partners we work with? I have heard conversations, and I've seen conversations where a vendor walks in wearing a particular attire, which is very a giveaway to the person's background. And I have seen the look on the procurement person's face, and I know this is not going to go through. And it has
Yeah.
not gone through. So I think those are some of the things, if we need to start measuring, we need to be intentional about it. In the world of inclusion, impact matters more than intent. A lot of intention has to go in, genuine intention, without looking at cost, without looking at the opportunity cost of your internal people, without looking at the actual cost of external people. And cost, as I said, has to be measured both internal and external cost. So we really need to have big hearts and say that, okay, we are working towards the greater good of the world. We are not working towards just my performance, my productivity. It's for, because people who are happy, people who are accepted, people who believe they are belong, who have get a sense of belonging, always work better. And somebody who works better will make the culture nice. Somebody who makes the culture nice will anyways be nice for the world.
So as we kind of inch closer to the end of the session, I want to capture some final thoughts from you, Shruti. So what is your vision for the future of DNI in India, and how do you think companies can align with that vision?
So I got into inclusion, Saurabh, because I felt it. When I came back from UK, I come from a normal salaried class. I was looking for opportunities for myself. And the number of times I was told that, oh, it's going to be very difficult because you've stayed outside the country. You don't have Indian context. It's going to be very difficult. You have young children. You're staying in a nuclear family. So while I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, what I got into thereafter was something that for me comes with passion. Comes because I believe in it. It comes because I really believe in the fact that nobody uh, should have to leave their dreams because somebody else doesn't believe in them. Because you're told on a day to day basis that you're incapable, or you're told on a day to day basis that you can't pull it off, or we have our own limiting beliefs that if I start working, who's going to take care of my kids? Things work out. So my vision is that every person should be given an opportunity to prove themselves. Even people who are caught in that cycle that I can't do it because my children need me, my family needs me, my in-laws need me. you know जब Nobody is indispensable. And you may not be able to give 9 hours in a day. Today is a world of gig economy. Post COVID, everybody can do, has opportunities. If you can't give 8 hours a day, can you give 3 hours a day? I remember my kids were very small. I used to just write job descriptions for organizations and give it to them. I used to just write policies and give it to them. You will always have 2, 3 hours a day. So my vision is that everybody is able to do what they really want to do, not get affected by the barriers which has been put on them by the society or the world. Do I think the world can do it? I think we can do it. We need to become a little more aware of our own potential. Most of us don't even know what we are capable of. Most of us are defined by the potential the world tells us. So my vision is people should really explore it. People should push their boundaries. Can we do it? We can do it. Can organizations support? Organizations can support. There are quite a few organizations which are supporting. The government has started supporting. The government has come up with schemes.
It's a beautiful thought that just give everyone equal opportunity and start from there, right? And let
Yeah.
people prove themselves as they go along. Wonderful.
We stand on the on the shoulders of so many of us who've been there before us.
Yeah.
And 150 years later, people will stand on our shoulders. So I think we've great movement to begin with, great thought, great idea. I'm overwhelmed just having this conversation with you.
Yeah. No, this is wonderful, Shruti. And I think we as kids were always taught India is a land of unity and diversity. Now is the time to kind of prove that to the world, and diversity in all forms, not just diversity of what we've been told diversity was, right? And this is where we need to kind of prove ourselves. We need to be aware, be acceptable, and embrace this change, right? So wonderful. It was great talking to you. I think there are a lot of questions that have come in. Let me just see. We might not be able to answer all of them because we're already running over time, but I will just take the pertinent ones which we've not possibly addressed as a part of our conversation. So there's Supriya Satish who's asking, in the face of generational shifts, how are traditional Indian values around hierarchy and authority evolving in younger workforces, and what impact does this leave on the D&I practice? Long one.
How is the younger generation towards hierarchy and authority? I think it's a two-way street. People are today used to asking the why of everything they do. So they are used to knowing that, okay, if I'm doing something, why am I doing something? You need to let me know the why of everything. The gap is that most of the times we say this needs to be done rather than telling people why this needs to be done. So it's a two-way street. One, we need to ensure there's business alignment. So even if I'm making a PPT, somebody needs to know why I'm making a PPT, and that's very important. And that will help dealing with authority and help dealing with hierarchy. And the other thing is we need to work with people saying the way your schools have worked or the way your homes have worked is not how organizations work.
Yeah.
And that needs to come in from the time induction happens, that, okay, this is a different world. It will have set rules. It will have expectations. This is not how it will work. And we can differ, as in there's so many conversations that happen about whether you need to work 24/7 or whether you need to work 9 hours a day and all of that. And I'm not getting into that because everyone is entitled to their opinion. But I think as long as there is work, we need to work. And there will be days when work needs to happen today. There will be days when work can happen day after. And when it can happen day after, let it happen day after. But when I need something on a Saturday morning because my client wants it or because it is urgent, then it needs to be done. And the new generation needs to understand that at the end of the day, it is output that matters to organizations.
Right. Another person in the audience, Tintu, has commented, instances of microaggression are insidious and, in my opinion, do more damage. What is the best way to call them out?
Awareness. People don't even know that. It's a part of our life. It's a part of our life from a very young age. लड़के हैं ऐसे ही behave करेंगे. Don't walk like a girl. Don't cry like a girl. There's certain gender defined roles. You will not expect a girl to know how to change the flat tire of a car. You will not expect a man to know how to cook. And we'll make statements around people. We'll body shame people. We'll talk about people's clothes. We have a habit of talking about people's accents. We have a habit of talking about. I remember there was a CEO once who made a statement about the fact that people who fill their plates with food in a buffet are actually very greedy people. He made that statement at the lunch table. You can't be making those statements. So these are very common things. I think if we don't call them out, if we don't specifically say examples like what I have just said, people will not know that they can have a long term damage to people. You cannot make statements about, oh, if you're getting emotional, is it that time of the month? You can't make statements if you're getting emotional. Are you going through menopause? If you can't make statements that you're getting emotional. Is it because you've been through grief in the recent past? No, I I know what I'm dealing with, and you may have an opinion, but you cannot. There are ways of putting that things across, and
Right.
microaggressions happen from home, so we need to start calling them out at home.
Again, thank you very much, Shruti, for
Thank you.
agreeing to be on this session with us. It was really, really wonderful talking to you and getting the entire perspective on DNI in India and globally. I also want to thank the audience. They've been very, very engaged as an audience, a lot of comments, a lot of questions. So that just showcases that they've been very engaged throughout the session. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the lovely audience. Please do share the questions. I'll try my best to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.